Welcome back to the Director's Playbook, the podcast focused on helping funeral professionals secure long-term success. Today, we're joined by someone who works closely with some of the most respected independent funeral homes in the country, Rob Paterkiewicz, the CEO of Selected Independent Funeral Homes. Hey, Rob, good to see you.
Good to see you, Paul.
Hey, thank you so much for joining us today.
Absolutely. Glad to be
Yep.
here.
I've been looking forward to this for a very long time. It's good to have you here.
Yeah, I appreciate being here.
So what's new? What's new with Selected?
What's new with Selected? Select is one of those groups that, there's such a rich history and tradition here that we really go out of our way to keep a lot of it the same. The values and the focus on independence, but at the same time, finding ways to stay ahead of the challenges that that everyone is facing. I think that the organization has certainly become a bit leaner in a couple of ways. The M&A activity has had a big impact on our organization for sure. That's a challenge. That's been an interesting ride. Even before 2020, we were dealing with some pretty substantial acquisition activity going on out there. But it's forced us to be leaner in our approach as well. So we've taken some very deliberate steps to kind of shed off activities and offerings that maybe weren't focused on our mission. And so that's given us a good opportunity to really kind of zero in on offering those things that are of the most value, right? The things that our members are really looking for. So things like our study group program and our communities. We have specific communities within our membership that are focused on women in funeral service, first generation owners, the next generation, as well as funeral home and cemetery combo units as well. And all of our member gatherings. Again, this is really what makes Selected is this kind of unique platform where we bring all of these owners and staff to together. So yeah, Selected's very much the same as we were when we were founded in 1917 as National Selected Morticians, but also different, growing with the changes that are facing the profession.
That's exciting. Thanks for that overview. And I don't know if everybody would recall, our listeners, that Select has been around for over 100 years. That's pretty incredible.
Yeah.
And so I want to make sure we give you a proper introduction on that. So how long have you been with Selected? And tell a little bit about your role, if you don't mind, for the group that may not be aware.
Yeah, sure. My role's a little unique. I'm not. My background is not in funeral service.
Okay.
My background is actually in association management. So Selected is a nonprofit trade association. As you said, established back in 1917. No, I wasn't here back then. But
I was worried about that, Rob.
Yeah, I've aged all right. My career, I've been here since 2007, so coming up on 19 years. And
hey, congratulations.
Yeah,
you don't hear stuff like that very often these days.
Yeah.
So for you to be at the helm that long, congratulations and hats off. Just want to recognize you for your leadership and all the hard work you're doing on behalf of all the independent funeral homes, and not just the United States, but North America and across the globe in some parts. So,
well, I appreciate that. And that's honestly, it's really one of the reasons why I've been here so long. I love this group, and I just, I can't say enough about the importance of what our members do. But my background is in the association world. So prior to this, I was with the American Society of Home Inspectors. I've worked with the Maple Flooring Manufacturers Association, the American Lighting Association. There's an association for everything out there. And I'm in the Chicago area. Selected is headquartered in the northern suburbs of Chicago. Chicago is, second to Washington, D.C. in terms of associations, right? American Medical Association, you name it, everybody's out here. So, 35 plus years of working for and leading associations is really my background.
I really love that. Thank you for sharing that very much. You have a very unique vantage point because you get to see what's happening across literally hundreds and hundreds of independent funeral homes. So, from where you sit, what feels different about the funeral profession right now at this juncture?
Well, I mean, staffing has just been such a major issue.
Yeah.
Personally, I feel like some of these challenges are self-inflicted, um, and that's where I'm seeing probably the biggest area of growth is, you know, owners and managers are recognizing that they have to take steps to not just recruit but to retain, right, top talent, and that involves way more than just placing an ad and interviewing people. This is, I said it's kind of self-inflicted because sadly this just hasn't been a lot of effort given, I think, to making sure that your firm is a place that someone wants to work and for a long time, and give up their free time and their family time, right? This is not an easy job. And you got to be passionate about what you're doing. I think that has a lot to do with why there's so many families involved in the business. Is you do kind of have to grow up in it, right, to be passionate about it. But yeah, I think from where I sit, I'm seeing a much more focus on being very deliberate about creating that right culture, supporting that culture, creating advancement opportunities, offering professional development to your staff so that they recognize that they're valued as well. Simple things as creating a better scheduling, program, all that stuff that matters to people who work for the firm. We're finally seeing, a lot of owners getting it and making sure that, they're taking those steps.
Yeah, that's so good. And a lot of your members are our customers, and so we host a lot of groups in our office on a regular basis, and we talk about the challenges in the funeral profession. And invariably, what you mentioned is staffing is comes up almost every single time. So I feel that just like you do, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on what can be done about it. I mean, how can we help funeral homes attract more talent and have people stay and be satisfied in their employment?
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, it goes to what I was covering is that there has to be you can't just expect that someone's going to sign up and work for you, right? Because they have to go through all that. They have to go through schooling and training, and so there's a whole ramp up period that has to take place. So firms that are smart about the process and connecting with local mortuary schools and finding ways to identify individuals in the community who might be future employees, empowering the people who work there to also look for colleagues, right, to join the staff is really critical. So it's empowering your whole team to say, hey, be on the lookout for someone like you. Be on the lookout for someone who you think fits, our culture.
Yeah.
And again, it's being very deliberate about involving your staff and that's one of the things that we push very hard here at Selected because membership in our organization is for everyone that works at the firm, not just the owner. Full-time, part-time, admin, management, you name it,
Yeah.
they're all members. And so we're always encouraging the owner to open that door and to let their staff participate in programs and activities and access resources so that they're advancing too. So it's not easy because again, the job itself is a challenging job. And so you have to really be deliberate about making your place the right place to work.
And I think some of that just may have to do with the intangibles of the job, just feeling, you mentioned culture
Yeah.
and just feeling included and feeling part of the team and feeling appreciated.
Yeah.
And those things, it's hard to measure those intangible qualities, but I think they do matter for this generation, maybe all generations of funeral directors. And so, can you speak to that a little bit about maybe what you've seen or some of your members are doing to incorporate some of these intangibles into their business?
Yeah, I mean, it starts at the top, and this is for one of the challenges are, I, let's say I'm the owner of the business, and I'm so busy running the business that I don't have time, frankly, to focus on all that. We have
Right.
a small firm. There's 2 or 3 people here, right? Or conversely, I'm running a large firm, and I've got several locations, and I've got several people with me. Regardless, the owner has to recognize that they do have to step back. They do have to open that door, so to speak, as you said, to involve and include people and to welcome their feedback. Um, and even share information about the business itself. You should be open with your team about what are the goals for this year, right? So we just started our
Right.
brand new year here, and what are the goals for 2026 for my business? Where do we want to be at the end of the year? Not just sadly, there are firms out there that are happy that they survived the year, right? We made it, and everybody's still here. Well, that's not a business, approach. You should identify some goals. Where do we want to be this year? What kind of numbers do we want to achieve? Where do we want to see our position in the community? Those types of things, and include the staff, include the team in on those discussions, and make sure they're aware of where do you want to be, because they're going to help you get there. So I think it's as I said, starting at the top, and the owner has to embrace that and recognize that, hey, I can't make every single decision here. I have to be open to include other people on the team to offer some feedback and help me run this company.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
what you're hinting on there, a lot of has to do with just basic leadership, and some of these principles are just foundational. And so I think if I'm in the funeral home owner's shoes, if I put myself in their shoes, it's probably hard because you don't know where to start when you're managing your business and you're meeting with all these families and you've got a chaotic schedule and there's a lot of emotion. But at some point you have to step out of your business and work on your business
Yep.
and just look at some of these foundational principles. So for example, what is the vision of our funeral home?
Yeah.
What goals do we have? I love that you mentioned that. And maybe that would be a good place to start. Is that something Selected is helping their membership with?
We do. We're very focused on that through many of our programs, and even just our member gatherings. There are always times within our meetings where it's just open discussion. Right? We have
Yeah.
a session called the early bird session at our annual meeting. It's 7 o'clock in the morning. It's an hour of open discussion. All of our roundtable meetings, all of our meetings have this open discussion time frame. And really what that allows our members to do is share what's going on in their communities and their areas. I'm out in California, here's what's happening here. Where in Florida, this is happening, and in Maine, this is happening. But it also gives them opportunities to kind of identify, like, hey, this year we're wanting to start a pet service, or a low cost cremation division, whatever it might be. Oh, well, you know what? We did that last year. Let me connect with you, and I'll share some of our things. So our members not only are sharing with each other, but they're in some ways they're kind of holding each other accountable. And so that creates the opportunity to set some goals. And we have that a, a very formal part of our study group program. Our study group program includes some specific agendas where we pair people up to be accountable to each other and to check in with each other, and how are you doing on those goals, and those types of things, and helping to measure that. But yeah, that's our that's a that's kind of a base thing for our members, is not just learning from each other, but kind of sharing what they're doing as well, and teaching others, kind of sharing what did they do last year that worked, but didn't work, that they want to try again, and kind of helping each other out with that.
It sounds so simple, but it's so important.
Yeah.
And I think Selected, what I'm hearing, almost becomes a business partner, if you will,
Oh,
for
yeah.
the membership. so that you're in this together to solve these problems.
That's
And
our goal. That's
yeah,
what I tell my team all the time. You couldn't, you said it perfect. I tell my team all the time, I don't want Selected to be just another group. I want Selected to be a part of the business. And we work very hard to become a part of the business because there are a ton of organizations out there in funeral service, a lot of associations and state groups and study group, those types of things. So yeah, we're focused on being a part of your business to help in making you even more successful than you already are.
I love that. And I hear sometimes people like to complain. I'm included. I like to complain. But at some point, we all as business owners or business leaders, when the complaining's done, we have to do something about it,
Mhm.
hopefully. And
Yeah.
so that's the good part is we get to actually create a solution that can solve that problem, and
Yeah.
that's where it gets fun.
Yeah.
So can you talk a little bit about some of the solutions you're helping funeral homes with? Anything come to mind? Any stories that come to mind?
We're focused, we touched on staffing, so that's an area that we're continually providing resources for our members to kind of share examples, everything from, employment manuals and policies to, again, recruitment. What tactics are you taking to recruit? Are you located in a more rural area? How are you attracting talent out there? What are you offering to incentivize someone to come work for you? Those, again, we share a lot of examples of what other members are doing. Certainly, succession. I'm sure we'll, I'm sure we'll move into the succession area
What,
soon, but
succession? Is that a big deal these days?
no, yeah. Um, that's a
Well,
huge thing for us.
well,
Every
since you
year.
brought it up, let's kind of
Yeah,
dive into that a little bit,
sure.
if you will. So,
Yeah.
how has succession planning or consolidation, um, venture capital, private equity, all of those things, how's that affected the independent funeral space? Just a big open-ended question for you.
Yeah, I mean, that's a complex answer. It's had the biggest impact, I think, of anything I've seen, other than, changes in consumer, preferences and cremation and those types of things. I mean, because these are all independent businesses, ownership and the future of the ownership is top of mind. Um, so we certainly put a lot of effort into trying to provide information on how do you properly begin that process of figuring out what does the future look like for your business. Now, some have said, gosh, you're encouraging your members to sell. No, we're not encouraging our members to sell. We're encouraging our members to make sure that that business remains, intact and hopefully independent for decades to come. And so whether that's a family, transition, which that's changed a lot too, gone are the days of, well, my daughter's going to take this over, my son's going to take this over, you know, well, I shouldn't say more. In many cases, they're not interested, or they may be interested, but they can't take on the debt. There's just no way to take on the ownership of the firm without much help. Um, So yeah, I mean, we're constantly working on providing guidance on what steps you could take, whether that's a family succession or a key employee, um, or something outside of that, right? Helping owners understand their options because I think sometimes, well, sadly, um, often the the planning that's needed for a proper succession just hasn't taken place, and
Yeah,
it's
it's no different than the pre-planning that we believe in on the business to consumer part. It's very similar on the business to business part because the longer you wait, the
yeah,
more risk you have, right? So really, you need to start earlier
you do.
before
You got to get
anything
comfortable with
happens.
that. Yeah, yeah, you got to get comfortable with it if you're the owner, and I get it. I mean, think about it. Uh, it's a family. Family dynamics are are interesting just on their own, but throw a business into that, right? Or a legacy, a 100+ year old business that you know, multiple generations in your family have been running, and that adds a whole different level of challenge. And there's a lot of baggage, right, that comes with family dynamics and those types of things. So it's tough, but I think, for us, what we preach is if you're if you're a family business, you're just going to have to accept the fact that there's going to be some tough conversations. And I think that's the key. It all starts with communication. Again, you said it already. That sounds really simple, but it's often the one that we hear is, the most challenging. I can't tell you how many times I've been pulled aside by an adult child, you know, who's like ready to leave because they're like, we can't even talk about it. Thanksgiving, we all sat at the table and it was dead silent because dad was mad because I asked about, what's the future look like? Those types of things. So it's got to start with communication. It's got to start with recognizing that one of the things we, joke a little bit about here is that death is not a succession plan. And sadly, more often than not, that's what happens. Someone dies and everybody's like, "Uh-oh, what happens now?" Well, there was no plan. What do you mean there was no plan? You're like, "Nope, dad never said anything, mom never said anything." So, yeah, that's the part that has to be avoided because then things happen where you know, the business is divvied up amongst folks that are not even interested in the business, right? Or it's given to someone and they got to all of a sudden quickly come up to speed to become an owner. Whereas if there had been some previous steps taken, right, to open the books, share some of the some of the details on how do you run this company and the operation, all that stuff that goes into running a company, right? You got to start having those conversations, so that someone's prepared to take it over.
Yeah, do you get into the conversations or the advice for your membership on I guess, the sales price of a business? So it seems like the money has a lot to do with it, and I can
Yes,
appreciate that because that's a big part.
of
But
course.
but aren't there sometimes even bigger concerns than just how much the funeral home could sell for, the business could sell
Oh,
for?
yeah, I mean, we leave the valuation stuff to the experts,
Yeah.
and luckily there are obviously great, consultants and experts out there that can help with that. Yeah, you're right. It's if the owner is worried about the legacy, then that's what you got to make sure you're focused on is the legacy of that business, and the price of the sale is important, but the legacy and keeping it in the community and keeping it independent, might outweigh some of that. Uh, I don't know. This area is such a challenge. So yeah, we've got a lot of work to do, I think. And this isn't just about selected members. This is about independence across the board. And I think I recently learned from a couple of consultants that, many owners, they don't have a retirement plan. They don't have a 401k. They don't have there's certainly no pensions, right? So many of them are like, well, my retirement is based on how much I'm going to sell this place for. And so that creates a challenge when, a son or a daughter or a, cousin or a nephew, it wants to take that business on and again, can't pay the price. There has to be some help from the owner to be able to make that happen. And I think that's why some of these recent acquisitions outside of independent ownership occur because it's like, well, you know what? It'd be easier just to sell it to this group because they're going to give me this money and we can all walk away and not have to worry about it.
Yeah, but the good news is, there's more larger independent funeral homes who are actually growing through acquisition as
There are for
well.
sure.
And
Yeah.
so that gives another option for someone who is interested in succession planning, excuse me, is interested in succession planning, but doesn't want to sell to certain people. And so they might have another option, and that gives them not just maybe the asking
Yeah.
price that they're looking for, but also the support for the family's legacy and additional resources and all the things that go along with a bigger business.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, and I think that's an area of growth for sure. Regional consolidation with independent ownership. Um, there are a few firms within Selected that are beginning to do that, and what they're doing is they're acquiring small firms and creating opportunities for ownership with the employees. You know, so yeah, I think that's exciting to see. I think you're going to see a lot more growth in independent, consolidators.
Well, now that we're on to trends a little bit, I know succession planning is obviously one of the biggest trends, funeral preferences, and on that, we've recently been educated on natural organic reduction. I don't know if your membership has brought that much up to you. Have you heard much about that lately?
Yeah, I mean, we certainly hear about it. I would say it's a very small percentage of our members who are offering that or resumption but it's just but I think the key is you gotta be aware of it. If you're in a community that's important, well, then that's what you got to make sure you're doing. I think a lot of because I've asked a number of members, certainly on the West Coast and in other parts of the country, Canada, what are you doing? Or even over in some of our European members. And it's important because it's something to keep an eye on and perhaps offer or at least offer access to through someone else. If it doesn't fit the business model of the firm. But so far, it's been very minimal, you know.
Yeah, I remember that reminds me of how it was with cremation back in the 90s. It was
Well, that's true.
cremation was we
That's
have a
true.
few, and of course now it's what's
Yeah.
over 60%
Yeah. Yeah.
nationwide. And
Yeah.
so I'm not saying that's going to happen with natural organic reduction. Who knows what's going to happen, but
Yeah.
I do find it interesting. And some of the things that I've learned recently is that, some families are choosing cremation not because they want it, but because it's the only other option available
Hmm.
for them versus burial. So if they have another option, would there be more people choosing? I don't know.
Could be.
And
Could be.
I recognize it's regional.
Yeah. It's regional, and I think a lot of. I mean, again, it's one of those things that uh, I don't. You know, I don't. I don't. I don't know how much consumers know about it. So it's
I don't think it's very much, but I
I
think
don't
it's
think so either.
coming.
I don't think so either. But you're right. You're absolutely right. It may be something that grows, and um, so yeah, it's you got to keep your finger on the pulse. You got to be aware of what's going on out there. Get out to some of these trade shows and see what's what, and understand where you stand. I think that's another area for firms to recognize is you can't chase every shiny thing. And I'm not being critical of any of these, but you got to. There are limitations. You can't be everything. You can't be everything, so that sometimes there are limitations to what you can do as a business, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that, but you do need to be purposeful. And again, kind of goes back to what we were talking about a few minutes ago. That's a conversation that you need to have with your team, right? So that if they're in an arrangement conference and this alternative disposition surfaces, and that's just not something that your firm is able to participate in, um, okay, no problem. How do we respond to that? Well, here's some suggested ways to respond to that, right? So I think that's important that you arm your team with where you stand on certain things. Um, yeah, a kind of a bizarre example of this, and it could be somewhat controversial, but I heard from one of our Canadian members that they worked with a husband and wife. The husband was terminally ill, and he chose to go the route of assisted, death, and came to make arrangements with the firm that he wanted to do it at the firm. Wanted to have the doctor come and meet them there and take care of everything there at the firm, and this was their plan, and they did it. You know, now that's talk about a like, and what this gentleman shared with the members was, we had to make a decision. Are we okay with that? Are we okay with that or not? Because there's moral issues and where you stand and that kind of stuff, right? But it's like he wanted to go. He was going to go somewhere. So
That's a new one for me.
yeah, everybody in the room was like, "Wait, what?" Like, but it's come Illinois just approved it. It's starting to
Really?
pop up here and there. And again, I'm not trying to be controversial, but I think it's important that there are conversations had about where does this firm stand on these types of things, and are we able to assist families? And it's okay that you may choose not to, but make sure everybody knows that and is ready to be able to have that conversation.
Yeah, I think that goes back to the earlier conversation we're having when you're setting the foundation of your business and establishing the vision, mission, and values for your company. And you can't, like you said, be all things to all people. So what do you want to be and how do you want to serve the community? And to just be the best at what you're, where you are. So
That's
stay in
right.
your lane,
Stay,
as
stay
they say.
in your lane. Yeah, exactly.
You were describing creating value for families, and some of the funeral homes are winding up with a lot of direct cremation these days, right? And the feeling is that some of those families are still having a service of some sort, some ritual, some ceremony, but the funeral home is excluded from that process. Can you speak to that a little bit? Because I know some churches are just kind of handling everything and then just letting the funeral home do the bare minimum part. Are you hearing that from your membership?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I mean, this has been an ongoing challenge for sure. And there is no one silver bullet to fix all that, obviously, because we would have tackled that a long
We would
time
have
ago.
already done that.
Yeah, but I do think there are some important steps for firms to take. So it includes you know communicating with not just communicating, but establishing relationships with churches in the community and the hospice groups and all the groups that are part of that death process now, right? um, and helping them understand the value that your firm can bring. It's teaching your team, teaching your staff that the moment the word, cremation surfaces, it doesn't mean that it's over. It doesn't mean anything. It's just that's their choice of disposition. Understood. So what will we do to honor the life of your mom or your dad or whomever you're planning that for? I think there's a lot of I think there are some who hear the word and are like, oh well, gets it. This will be a quick one, and we're not getting much out of this, right? So you have to change that approach and recognize that that's just part of the process, and there are all sorts of other things that can be brought forth. I think obviously the community involvement and interacting with folks, pre-planning. What a great opportunity, the pre-planning
Right.
work, right? To kind of talk about where can we help you? No, you don't have to come here and have a visitation and a service here. We can assist you wherever you want to be, whether that's, right after the death or later on in the year. Um, so yeah, I think, and again, there's no one answer to it, but I do think it's a culmination of a number of things, and it has a lot to do with communication, education, showing by example, um, you know, having a strong social presence, social media presence to be able to
Yeah.
share, some of the more unique services that you may be offering. All that stuff is important to do.
I don't know how well you know Dr. Alan Wolfeld,
Mhm.
but
Oh,
I love the way he says things because he says when words are inadequate, we have a funeral, and he helps funeral homes believe in the value of funeral service, which helps them articulate to families why funerals matter. And so then, if that's done well on the front end, then you don't have to worry about being disintermediated by some other entity,
yeah.
right?
Yep.
And so I think that's good advice that you were sharing to have an open dialogue with those stakeholders in the community. And I think also just to be proactive with it, to get their feedback. How are things going
Right.
with the hospice team or with the clergy or whoever your business leaders are in your community? And they'll
Right.
tell you for sure.
Yeah. And again, here's where you can empower your staff. Cause I'm
Yeah.
sure, there's probably an owner sitting here listening to this, like, man, I don't have time. I don't have time for all that. Or maybe I'm in a community where I was just talking to one of our board members recently, and she shared. She said there are hundreds of hospice organizations within a stone's throw. Right? How do we decipher which one to establish the relationship with? That's tough. That's a tough situation. But I do think that you have to empower everyone on your team to be um, to be listening and to be able to communicate your message. There are messages that you can craft and share with your team, right? It's like a PR effort, right? Hey, if you're at the community lunch, whatever, an opportunity, and you're amongst people who live in this area, here are some really important points to try to drop into the conversation. Not, it doesn't have to be a professional presentation, but there are a few things that you can drop into this, right? We serve all faiths, we serve all people, we do this, we do that, we've assisted with it, whatever. So those are important things, I think, to teach your team, because they can be a mouth, a spokesperson for the firm as well. It doesn't always have to be on the owner's shoulder.
Yeah. Well, and it's a new year and it's a new day. And, we believe new creates momentum. So if something new you want to do in your business, start it now. And
Yeah,
then that's something you can bring to your community in 2026.
absolutely.
Just that pro, even if you can't talk to every organization all at once,
Yeah.
talking to one or two or three
Mhm.
is a great head start in
Yep.
just accomplishing what you want for your business.
Yeah, definitely, definitely.
I
And
really
and
like
you
that.
start, you can start, just start. just just start. I think sometimes um uh folks can get in their own way, and they, well, we didn't get this launched in January, so we'll just try it again next year. No, it's okay to start it now. It's okay. It's okay to begin to have those conversations. It doesn't have to be a formal business plan. It's really more, it's that communication, it's those discussions with your team to find ways to get the message out there.
Yeah, and they may think they can't afford it, but they almost can't afford not to do it
Right. Oh yeah.
because there is a long-term effect when you get cut out of that part of the ritual and ceremony, then that's you basically lose that family, their
You do.
whole heritage.
You do. And I think too, another one that I always preach to members, it's, and I get it. It's natural to want to see what your competition is doing. It's important to see what your competition is doing, but sometimes um, I have seen such a focus on the competition, like who went there, right? Why did they go there? We served that family a few years ago. Why did they go there? And what are they doing? And they're so focused on this firm a mile down the road that they're overlooking some of the other challenges that might be going on either within their own firm or in that community too. So yeah, I think you have to be very purposeful about keeping an eye on it is important, but don't get so obsessed with it that you're overlooking some of the obvious stuff that you got to take care of on your own.
Great point.
Yeah.
Well, so let's talk about Selected a little bit. I know you have the annual meeting. Is that coming up in the springtime
Our annual meeting's in the fall.
or in the fall?
So this year it'll be September 2nd through the 5th. We'll be in Louisville, Kentucky. This will
All
be our
right.
first time. Yeah, our first time in Louisville with the annual meeting. This last year we were in New Orleans. Had a great event. So yeah, our meeting is in the fall. Our annual meeting is in the fall.
Have you already planned out the theme yet for 2026, or is you're still work in development with that?
Yeah, we're in development on that, putting our speakers together. And again, our meetings are really heavy member focused. So we we
Right.
we bring a number of great speakers in, but we also present our own members, and have them kind of share challenges and successes that they've had. But throughout the year, we have a number of, and actually at the end of this month, January is our next Gen seminar. So this is one of our really popular programs where our younger members come together. offshore, for a few days of some sun and relaxation, but also, a lot of interaction and sharing with each other. And then throughout the year, our members actually we have roundtable meetings. And so our members will host these roundtable meetings. It's a day-long meeting at a firm, and other
So it's
members
hosted at the funeral, one of the funeral homes.
at the funeral home.
Good.
And that's that's a big part of us, of what we do, right? So it's not just this interaction, but yeah, why don't you all come over, for a meeting at my firm, and we'll go through some things and talk. We'll do a tour. I'll show you how I do it.
Wow.
Would love to get your feedback and have your questions. And so it's we typically will see, maybe 12 to 14 or 15 of these roundtable meetings that take place throughout the year, all over the country.
That's like a peer review, it's really good because, you're getting to get quality feedback, constructive criticism even,
Yeah.
and applause for things you're doing well. So it's really good.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, and you can't, not just anybody can be a member of Selected, right? So how does that process work?
Yeah, membership here is by invitation. And so that invitation is extended after a number of things have been addressed. First and foremost, the owner has to be comfortable with not just signing on and participating, but sharing. So one of our values is that members are teachers and students at the same time. It's a really important part of this organization. So if you're not comfortable kind of sharing what's going on at your firm and helping another member, this is not the place for you. And so that's a key piece that we zero in on right off the bat. Is this is who we are. We're like a mastermind group. We really are very much like a mastermind, large study group, environment. You also have to demonstrate your commitment to quality and excellence. So we do have a standard of care that it has to be followed at all times. And the big one is you have to be sponsored by a current member. So a current member has to be ready to vouch for you. Like, I know this firm, I've worked with this firm. They are a top-notch firm, and they will be an active member of the organization. And then once all that's done, we actually present that firm and their application to the entire membership. So the entire membership is asked to vote on that firm, and one no vote will stop the process. And the board of directors takes a look at why are you saying no? Is there something about the firm that is concerning? And if that's an issue, then the invitation is not extended. But more often than not, typically we work very hard to recruit and fill that pipeline with future members, really top-notch quality firms. And there are the great news is that there are many great, excellent, strong, growing firms out there who we would love to welcome to Selected membership.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously there's thousands and thousands of independent funeral homes, and so you don't want to have every one of them as a member because otherwise it wouldn't be selected. I mean, so I appreciate how seriously you take the membership process. That means a lot. And I think if you're a funeral home owner wanting to seek membership, you want it to be a little bit challenging because you don't want everyone to be in there necessarily.
Yeah. And I think what it does too is and that's one of the reasons why we see such an open exchange amongst members, is because they've all, like, I know what you did to get in here. I did the same thing. So we're part of this peer group now. And so that kind of levels the playing field. It's not so much like, I compete with Paul, so I don't know, I'm not going to share anything with him. Right. We jumped through some hoops to get here. And I think that's also why we have a lot of firms that have maintained membership. Every year we honor firms that have entered what we call our century, the Selected Century Club, 100 years of continuous membership. So we have firms that have been here since day one.
So cool.
Yeah. So that's important. That's an important element of who we are as an organization.
Yeah, and there's a sense of vulnerability and transparency that they feel because everyone has to have that same commitment.
Yeah.
to join,
Sure.
right? I
Yeah.
love that. Thanks for sharing that. All right, we'll get one more thing here and then we'll kind of move on. But from your seat right now, where you stand or where you are, what's the biggest opportunity in front of the independent funeral homes right now? What would you say in your mind?
I think that it's important for independents to work together. There's so many challenges facing all funeral homes, corporate, private equity, independent, you name it. There's a lot out there that's creating challenge. So there's that aspect of it. But I think the independents are, I wouldn't say they're under fire, but they certainly are. um, they're dealing with a lot and having to demonstrate their value. And so this is where I think coming together as a community, if you will, whether that's through Selected or another group, I think it's important that they recognize that we're stronger together. Um, and and sometimes that kind of goes back to what I was saying about maybe not so focused on beating the competition, but rather working together, right? Wouldn't you rather work with someone who you feel is kind of at the same level as you to make a difference, whether it's in the community or within the profession itself? So I think the opportunity that's out there right now that I would encourage owners and staff to consider is that you need to band together a bit here. These are challenging times, and consumers don't fully recognize the value that you bring. And so it's important to work together to get that message out there and to take control of your firm's destiny and your future, right?
Oh, that's good because with every challenge, it's great opportunity too. So you're really giving hope to the next generation of funeral home owners
Mhm.
that the future is bright and there's things that you can do if you handle your business accordingly.
Yep. Yep. Definitely. Definitely. I mean, look at why do you feel why do you know or to say, why is private equity why is private equity so interested in funeral service? I mean, there's growth coming here, and honestly, I wonder if there's going to be enough to handle the growth that's coming in the death rate. So, yeah, there's certainly opportunities ahead here, and I think a group like Selected or other opportunities for firms to be working together is really the right way to go.
I love it. Well, Rob, thank you for being on today, and thank you
No,
for leading the charge for the independent funeral homes here. And keep up the great work.
thank you.
Appreciate you being on.
Yeah, we appreciate the opportunity, Paul.
Thank you for joining us for this conversation with Rob Paterkiewicz. We hope today's discussion gave you fresh insight into the future of independent funeral homes and the leadership habits that make a lasting impact. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe to Director's Playbook on your favorite podcast platform so you never miss an update. And as always, we'd love to hear your feedback. Connect with us and let us know what topics you'd like to explore next. Until next time, keep leading with purpose.